we got a chance to speak to the director of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Check out our conversation with Wes Ball. I gotta say, man, I was incredibly anxious going into this.
Me too.
Rise, Dawn, War. Oh, great. Rise, Dawn, and War are as close to perfect a trilogy as you can
Sure.
get, but you nailed it, man.
All right.
Like, I wasn't sure where you were going to take this, and there was this underlying mystery that kept me hooked
That's great.
throughout.
That was the goal. Mission accomplished.
Oh, fantastic. But to get things started, what in God's name made you agree to take on something like this? There hasn't been a great track record of number four movies.
That's right. Well, that was my hesitation originally. That was my anxiousness as well. I agree with you. I think the previous trilogy was perfect. You know, it was awesome and perfect closure too, right? And I grew up on the original '68 movie, and so honestly, it wasn't until I had this simple idea that if you fast forwarded several hundred years after Caesar, that it just opens up so many opportunities for new kinds of stories, new characters. And so that was the big kind of, for me, epiphany, that suddenly I saw all these different these possibilities. You know what I mean? Of how we could make a movie that stands on its own, that could be its own thing, while still honoring kind of what came before. You know, where we're not required to like exist because of those previous movies. We actually get to use those previous movies to enhance our story. Once we did that, I suddenly got really excited, and I was like, "Oh, I think I know how to do this. I think this is how you do it." And so I got really excited, talked to all these different guys, and obviously brought Rick and Amanda in, who wrote the previous movies. Told them about it. They suggested talking to Josh Friedman. They had just worked on they had just written the Avatar movies together, and so we were off to the races. We had a good team around us that wanted to do it right, basically.
Was there any point in your process where you thought, hey, maybe we should try with like Cornelius's story or something?
Nah, for me, no. I totally understand the instinct.
Like it was the easy way in, right?
That was my thing. It felt too obvious, and my problem was I could not see where that goes. I felt like the runway was so short. I felt like it's like, okay, you do that thing, and then you're always compared to Caesar, and you're always compared to the previous movies, and it becomes a distraction in a way. Now, I'm not saying that we couldn't tell that story in the future. There's always a chance for that. But for me personally, I didn't have that interest, and I understand the instinct of it, but I think if people will come into this thing with an open mind, that they will still get what they want out of this. In a weird way, Noah is he embodies almost what you want to see in that Cornelius idea. So, spiritually, the movies and the characters are very connected in that way, I think.
The new reboot, all those three movies and yours feel incredibly grounded, but I was curious whether there was any temptation ever to go wild with something like time travel, like they did with the original Planet of the Apes.
Well, we still got a long way to go.
Oh, what does that mean?
Exactly. I mean, look, this space and time travel and all this stuff is obviously a huge part of this franchise. And I'll say this: I was pretty confident we were not going to do it in this movie.
Okay.
Right. And I would also kind of argue that the movies and Matt Reeves' movies in particular, it's kind of the reality and the grounded nature of it. It's kind of hard to imagine time travel in that movie,
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying it never happens, but maybe there's a way to reinterpret it. Maybe there's a way to kind of do something with the idea of it that sticks in this world that is a grounded world that you believe is possible. You know what I mean? Because that's the thing about a franchise that's stretched now 50 plus years. Yeah. Tastes change. Things that audiences are kind of capable of kind of going with are different, and so it'll be a delicate process as we kind of navigate forward. But we've got ideas on how to keep going with this story and these characters.
So when you broke the story, did you immediately conceive this as something like a new trilogy, or were you just focused on let's get through Kingdom and then we'll work out the rest? Or do you have like a Bible?
Well, I like to say that we're not naive filmmakers. This is an important franchise for the studio. Of course,
Yeah.
they don't want a one-off. They want something that can continue, and so do we, because we want characters that are rich enough to sustain a long story. With that said, we were very much focused on making sure this movie, felt complete. It felt like it was one journey. It had a closure. It had an end, while at the same time, there's literally a door that opens to hopefully future stories and future struggles and future drama, and relationships between these characters.
And I'll tell you, one of the strongest things about all four movies is that by the end of each one, I'm left confused as to whose side I'm on.
Yeah, that's
And
always the
more
thing,
often
right?
than not, I'm like, you know what? Fuck the humans.
Well, I mean, that starts from the '68 movie, right? I mean, literally, it's like,
Right?
you idiots,
Yeah.
you blew it up. It's always, these movies are always reflecting back ourselves, right? We're always looking at what we like about ourselves and what we don't like about ourselves. They're cautionary tales often. I think we are somewhat optimistic in our movie. I think we end in a place where, we hope that there can be peaceful coexistence between apes and humans. But there is always that question, what might get in the way of that? Can we actually learn to live with each other? Is obviously a big idea in all these movies, really. You know what I mean? But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's kind of what makes it fun. It's always gray. It's always room to talk about, these ideas after the movie's over.
Tell me this. When they're on the bridge and they're crossing the river, am I right in thinking that you use some musical cues from the 70s? It
Oh
sounded
yeah.
a bit beneath.
Oh, absolutely. Jerry
Oh,
Goldsmith is all over this movie. There's even in The Human Hunt. There's plenty of it there too. I told John, my paisano, my composer, it's like you got to have one foot in Jerry Goldsmith, you got to have one foot in Michael Giacchino, and the rest is yours. Is what I told him, right? And so I think John did a great job of finding that kind of DNA from all the things that people remember, but kind of implementing it into our own thing here, so that again we feel like we're a part of this awesome legacy of movies.
I think marketing people are freaked out about sequels, especially when it's the fourth movie, right? But
Sure.
I have to say, it's so easy these days to watch one, two, and three.
Yeah.
And I think I rewatched one, two, and three just before going
Oh,
into
that's
yours
fantastic. That's the
again.
way to do it, I think.
And it's such a rich experience, like the Easter eggs and all of
Yeah,
that stuff. And
sure.
then before that, I'm a bit crazy. I sat down and watched the other
Oh my God,
old
all of
Planet of
them?
the Apes movies,
Oh
all
my
of them,
God.
all of them, even the bad ones. And I was sitting there, like just pointing at this
Yeah.
lawgiver. I was like,
Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
there we go,
Yeah.
yes, and yeah, and it was such a wonderful experience.
That's great. I'm glad. I mean, we made this for someone like you, honestly, because like we are fans to ourselves, and we see ourselves standing between both the kind of coming from the Caesar trilogy, but heading towards the '68 original. You know what I mean? So we try to kind of play with both ideas. There's even things of like ideas of beneath in there, and also little things we're laying down track work for future movies. So yeah, I'm glad you picked up on a lot of that stuff. It's great.
I'm very excited, man. I'm all out of time, but very quickly, I am so excited to see what you do with Zelda. The NES Gold cartridge thing was the first video game I ever played.
Me
So,
too.
good
Yeah.
luck with
Yeah.
that.
Thank you, sir.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I am too. So thank
Cheers,
you very
man.
much.
That was Wes Ball. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes opens in Malaysian cinemas May 9th. Check it out. Let us know what you think. Thank you so much for watching.